goofy movie.
A goofy movie?
A goofy movie.
A goofy movie.
A goofy movie.
A goofy movie?
There we go. There's the cold open.
Us confusingly Tom Green memeing a goofy movie.
Yeah.
I feel like that captures this episode pretty well too.
Lazor Comb. We are not going to panic.
What the heck even happened to you, man?
Vengeance. Shrimp Daddy! Ha 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 ha!
Give him a hockey stick!
What am I, fucking magician, man?
Am I some kind of fucking magician, man?
Fucking nerd.
Big nerd.
Whatever. It's not like we're professionals anyway.
And I'm not sorry anymore.
Time to big brain.
Every day, yes.
What is the Airwolf of trains?
Lazor Comb Productions, episode 101.
Lazor Comb Productions, episode 101. The podcast where we comb through classic television with a fine-tooth laser. Wait. Do you hear that? It's the sound of a goofy movie. I am one of your hosts, NeoCal.
And I have been sent back in time, reprogrammed by my future self to review this episode of Goof Troop, the goofiest movie of all. And my name is Christopher Siege.
Another goofy movie.
Yet another
Boogaloo.
Goof Troop 2, Goof Boogaloo.
Goof Troop 2, Goof Boogaloo. Goof Troop 3, Goofy Strikes Again.
Goof Troop Part 4.
2 Goof, 4 Troop. 4 Troop.
Goof Troop 5, Max's Big Day Out. You know,
And
that
then,
could actually be that could be the title of a goofy movie.
It sure can. Here we are at Lazor Comb reviewing a goofy movie?
A goofy movie.
Or the coming of a goofy movie as told by Donald Glover?
So this week on the Lazor Comb podcast, we're doing a Patreon pick, and we're doing something new with the Patreon picks now. If you subscribe to our Patreon at patreon.com/lazorcomb, LAZORCOMB. At the $10 tier, you get to pick a show for us to review a random episode of on this very podcast. Now, at the $20 tier, not only can you pick the show, you can pick the episode. Truly putting to the test whether the whole eternal argument of you just landed on a bad episode, putting that to the test. This can be your chance. If you really want us to potentially love something a show that you love, $20, you can pick the exact episode that you think we should see.
That's right. And if you give us $50, we may watch a show. No, I'm not watching 3-2-1 Penguins again.
So our longtime listener and patron, Jared, at the $20 tier, he is the person that we're kicking off this new endeavor with. So thank you for the support. Big shout out. So what he wanted us to watch was a show called Atlanta.
I knew things were going downhill when Thomas, his wife, left him. She had been there from the beginning. And he started sleeping in his office. And one day, there was a board meeting. All the Disney heads were there, and they started talking about the budget was going a bit high on Goofy. And one of the guys asked Thomas, he said, are you in control of the budget? And Thomas said, of course I am. I'm Goofy. And then he did this chilling laugh, like, like Goofy, but broken. And it was terrifying, man. I almost started crying. He really thought he was Goofy.
And the episode that he wanted us to watch was the season 4, episode 8 episode, The Goof Who Sat by the Door. Now, props to Jared. This is probably the most unusual thing that we've watched. I don't mean that in a bad way.
Mm-hmm.
I also don't know if I mean it in a good way either. I'm not really sure. But
we'll see. We'll see.
Now, to preface this, if you've been listening to this podcast for the past 100 episodes, or even the past 50 episodes, or even the past 20, you know that our shtick is basically we kind of summarize what happens in the episode of a show. We kind of recap the events and then provide commentary on said events. This episode of Atlanta is presented in a documentary format. Now, unfortunately, how we normally do things on this podcast, it doesn't really work when what you're dealing with is 35 minutes of talking heads in a documentary format, because there's nothing really to recap there. If you know what I'm saying.
No, like there's no plot to recap. And not in a satisfying way, because it's the mockumentary. Not gonna lie, I went into this, maybe I wasn't paying attention to the title. I have no idea if all of Atlanta is like this or if this is like a one-off, but I thought I was going in watching a documentary. And not gonna lie, it had me in the first half.
Yeah, on that note, I would say we've actually never mentioned documentaries before and things that we exclude. I think now
I feel like that needs to be.
Now we definitely have to say that documentaries.
I thought it went without saying.
Well, here's the reason why.
It's not that I didn't like what we just watched. It's that. Go ahead.
Now, here's the reason why this kind of skirts the line is because this is fictitious. This is telling a fictional story. It's not an actual documentary. There is an overarching story that is being told here. So this does count. So I'm not going to disqualify it. But it did kind of put the thought in my head that we should probably specify that we're not going to review documentaries on this show. It needs to be narrative based and it needs to have a story. So to go over all of our exclusionary rule, like all of our rules for things that we're that we will cover on this show.
Yeah,
the show has to be done. So the episode, one way or another, canceled, ended on its own, whatever. The show has to be complete. It needs to be
off the air. Yeah,
yeah,
or not off the air. Its run needs to be finished.
Yeah, its run needs to be finished. It needs to be narrative based. There needs to be a story to it. There needs to be a plot. It needs to be fictitious. So no reality shows, no pro wrestling,
no game shows.
Which, I mean, I've really been tempted to be like, where in the world's Carmen Sandiego? But
maybe that's another offshoot we have. Maybe we have like a 25 episode podcast where, Price is Right. Whose line is it anyway? Like we just
the spin-off to this where we review random
Jeopardy.
episodes of game shows, and we start with where in the world is Carmen Sandiego. Folks, if you want to see us do that, let us know. So yeah, nothing like that. No competition shows. So like I said, no reality shows, but no competition shows either. Things like American Gladiators. I think I already said no pro wrestling, but that as much as I love pro wrestling, that's also excluded.
Yeah.
And no documentaries. But because
You missed that one.
I never thought a documentary would ever come up, honestly, but here we are. But as I said, this one does technically count because it is a fake documentary telling a fictitious story. Now, what is that fictitious story? Well, it's the fictitious story of a man named Thomas Washington, who shortly after the 1992 LA riots becomes the CEO of Disney and sets out to make
By accident?
by accident, and sets out to create, as he puts it, the blackest movie ever. And that movie ends up being a Goofy movie. Now, the version of the Goofy movie that we saw, IRL, is a heavily edited version from what his original vision was.
Yeah.
Over time, he was removed from power by the Disney board because he started becoming mentally unhinged, became an alcoholic, started getting abusive toward his family, and eventually paranoid, and eventually committed suicide.
But there's kind of like a conspiracy because they never found his body, and he wasn't willfully stepping down from the position that he accidentally was put into.
Yeah.
And due to racial tensions in the early 90s LA riots, like Siege said, firing your black CEO when it was viewed as trailblazing, probably not like a good look.
It would be poor optics, yeah.
And it's presented, the first chunk of it, like third of it or so, is presented where it's talking about his life and how he enjoys cartoons and drawing from a young age, before it even mentions anything about Disney.
Right. And yeah, he created a Goofy movie basically to be a way to potentially communicate with his son in the future. His son, whose name is also Maxwell, much like Goofy's son in a Goofy movie.
There's a line where he had told his wife, because it's interviewing his wife, if I'm ever not around to be an influence for my son, like show him this movie.
Right. That's the episode of Atlanta. It's a very atypical episode. I have seen Atlanta once. I remember watching the first couple of episodes back when the show was new. Okay. I don't remember a lot about it because that was 8 years ago now. I remember not getting into it at the time, but I would be willing to go back and give it another shot. It's all available on Disney Plus.
Mm-hmm.
And the show is created by and starring Donald Glover, the great Donald Glover. Probably one of the most multi-talented people in show business alive right now.
Yeah.
Like what can't the man do? It's almost not fair.
Right? So the themes of what it's trying to talk about are, which I like a lot, actually. Well, what did you take from it, Christopher?
I thought it was interesting in that I feel like they were trying to examine how young Black Americans were depicted in media in the 1990s. Because you kind of, and look, I'm coming at this from the perspective of a very white dude from a small West Coast Canadian town. So bear in mind. But I remember in movies and TV at the time, Black characters were depicted either as like comedic family types, like Cosby Show, Family Matters, that kind of thing.
Family Matters.
Or they were like Boys in the Hood, Menace to Society, like street gangbangers. And there wasn't really a lot of middle ground.
Well, even and again, not going to get into like the at the person behind the Cosby Show. But what they what the Cosby Show, Fat Albert, like those kind of things were kind of like ahead of their time, like great efforts being made to depict like African American like people in like a not stereotypical light, which wasn't the case for most of like American media.
Right.
And so this is kind of, like we said, late 80s, like early 90s. The idea that all of this old curmudgeonly group of white people accidentally put in the wrong name when they were voting for who to bring in as CEO, and then there were just no take backsies, is kind of hilarious to me. But yeah, it talks about Black exceptionalism, which is like the idea that Black people are only celebrated if they're really good at basketball,
Right.
if they're really good singers, if
Right.
they're, do you know what I mean? Like and that's how, instead of just maybe a good dad, maybe like a good person, maybe like just every other walk of life, instead of like, you know, like the Black guy at work.
Right.
Right. Or exactly. And
in the case of
that's
like,
why I mean, it had me in the first half, because I missed the text at the beginning being like, hey, we asked Disney about this. This is false. I saw a bunch of text and I was like drinking my coffee and I'm like, okay, let's go. And so it had me in the first half.
right.
And I was like, wait a second. There's no way they'd accidentally like just be like, well, we wrote the wrong name down, so you're CEO now.
Now,
it gets really wild at the end.
I didn't
like
really
conspiratorial.
Now, this documentary depicts a Goofy movie as something that has been embraced by African American communities as being kind of addressing, well, like you said, like how Black people tend to be. Black exceptionalism tends to be celebrated, whereas this, something like a Goofy movie, is tackling more like everyday, like depicting characters in more like everyday type situations. Like Goofy, he's a single dad. He's not particularly well off. Like Max is...
He works hard, but the job isn't rewarding and he can't go anywhere in it.
And Max is growing up, and as he's growing up...
He's embarrassed by his dad,
and their relationship is starting to fork as time goes on. And Goofy like is just trying really hard to be a good dad and just wants to go on this,
but also connect with him.
Yeah. So
sometimes it means you're making your kid do things they don't want. I'm sorry, and I vividly remember how fucking terrible I was at 15, 16.
Me too.
I'm sorry, man. You don't know shit past me. Like, shut up. Let your parents like teach you how to dance or like take you on road trips or go fishing with them. Man, I promise you that is more important than like going and hanging out with friends that you're never going to see again.
Right. Yeah, and like when I was around Max's age, had an uncle who kept like dragging me along to... for dragging me along on fishing trips that I didn't want to go on.
Okay.
You know the uncle that I'm talking about.
Yeah.
He's no longer with us now, unfortunately. But
yeah, I think he always meant well. Yeah,
he did always mean well. And in like I hated going on these stupid fishing trips. Most of the time, I would just go. On them with him because
like he really wanted you to go,
and he would buy beer. Honestly,
that's got him.
He would buy beer. We would go, and I'd drink like a six. We both each drink like a 6-pack and just fish. He would tell. He would tell like this was the early 2000. This was around the year 2000, so he would tell like really bad jokes. Most of them were like kind of racially charged or like vaguely homophobic, etc., etc. But yeah, I hated these trips and would have much rather like done just about anything else,
Like literally anything.
but literally anything else. But I don't know, thinking back on it, maybe I should have been more receptive to it.
And that's how it is because we would have rather literally done anything else. But here's the thing: we wouldn't have remembered literally anything else. What, like hanging out, walking to the mall,
Exactly, yeah.
the,
Yeah,
playing
weirdly
video,
enough, I still remember all these like dumb fishing trips that I didn't want to go on, but like
and that's kind of, oh man, there's no way to tell a teenager that though. Like I remember how it's so frustrating vividly remembering how dumb I was when I was a teenager.
right?
Like I can like a lot of people can't. I don't know if maybe it's a generational thing or people want to remove themselves from when they were a kid, but I so vividly remember my mindset and like you don't want to do anything with your like uncle, but it's like I guarantee you like playing Risk for the 60th time not as important as you as you think.
Yeah.
And
Don't you
one
ever
thing,
wish you could, like X-Men Days of Future Past, like time warp your mind into your like 15-year-old self? Like, still I'll have
uh,
all of your wisdom and knowledge that you have now. Still
and
have your
memories
personality be the same, but you're just your
and
mind is time
memories,
and memories. Yeah,
yeah,
but
all the time,
your mind
all
is
the
just
time,
time warped back, and you get a chance to like for a do over.
right? All the time.
Yeah.
One thing I think of that this is interesting because we're kind of talking about a goofy movie, but like that's kind of what like the documentary is like about from a different perspective, from the perspective of here are all these themes that make it seem like like this was purposefully produced as like a black movie, a black Disney movie, right? And you
And
know what, it kind of it sells it on me again, white person from the west coast of Canada, not the not like as far from black as possible, but like
yeah,
it makes some head scratchers where you're like, wait, hold on. Like some of them are reaches, but like whatever, where it's like, oh, like the trip they take going cross country is symbolic of getting out of Jim Crow country and like the Underground Railroad.
right, right.
Right.
I
And
thought
I'm
that was
like, that's
it's reaching.
clever.
It's
It's
reaching, but
it's
it was
reaching, but
kind
I'm
of
like,
neat.
hold up. That's kind of neat, right?
I actually I had no idea until today that a Goofy movie had been so widely embraced by African American communities. But you know what? Sweet. I learned something today. Funny enough, I never actually saw a Goofy movie as a kid. I really liked the
Oh,
show Goof Troop, but for one reason
me
or another.
too.
But for one reason or another, I never saw a Goofy movie until I was in my early 30s.
I was late on it. Like we were poor. We didn't go to movie theaters very often. So I watched it like a couple years later, and me and my cousins were super into it.
Mm.
Um, Very interesting that it's one of those movies where when you watch when you're a kid, you're on Max's side, and then you watch when you're an adult, and you're on Goofy's side.
Yeah, and I remember my takeaway because as I just said, I think I was like 30 or 31, maybe the first time I saw the movie, first
Right.
and only time I saw the movie actually. And
Oh shit, you were like 30, huh?
yeah, I think I was like 2016 or 2017 that I saw it for the first time. A former partner of mine is a big fan of that movie, and
Hmm.
so she got me
Yeah.
to watch it. Um, but I remember watching it and finding it to be a very touching and heartwarming story.
It is.
and I definitely saw both of their perspectives watching it as an adult, because I can see exactly where Goofy's coming from on everything. But I also remember being that, that 15-year-old who didn't want to go fishing with his uncle.
Yeah. Yeah, and so as we move away from like the themes, because the childhood of Thomas Washington, is that the
Thomas
guy's
Washington,
name?
yeah.
Thomas Washington, and because one of the people it's interviewing is his cousin, and his cousin's like, they remember like watching like cartoons and stuff like that and being like, man, Goofy's black, right? Like Goofy's black, right? And I remember thinking that at some point and having people like argue with me, and I was like, oh, okay, well, yeah, I know they're animals, but like human beings make everything.
Yeah.
And there's right. And in this documentary, Washington brings up something like with all of like the animators and the writing team and everyone. He pulls everyone inside and he shows them a clip and he's like, how come Goofy is letting Mickey walk what's his name, Pluto around? And everybody's like quiet and he's like, well, what are you talking about? He's like, a dog. And it's like, yeah, but Goofy's a dog and so is Pluto.
So
I've been saying that for years. How come the dogs have dogs?
And I
understand there's a difference between people and monkeys. Right.
And he mentions, he's like, why would Goofy let Mickey do that to one of his own kind? There's another part in the episode where
there's symbology
there's a lot
that I'm not qualified to touch on. Yeah.
Another thing that I thought was interesting is there's a couple of points in the documentary where this like older like white guy is being interviewed, and
oh yeah,
and
fuck, that guy sells it.
This older white guy is being interviewed, and he mentions that he's like, yeah, Washington and like Sinbad and like a bunch of other notable like celebrities at the time.
They would all just hang out in his office.
And he's like, oh, and I walked in there, and Washington is just like, hey, who ordered the white rice? And he's like, I don't understand why he had to act like that.
I don't understand why he had to say something like that.
And I see what they're going with, what they're going for there. And I can't remember all of them, but every time they talk to this like older white guy, it's always a situation where someone is very just casually racist to him and he doesn't understand why it's happening.
Oh, to him?
Yeah.
Yeah, like he doesn't even understand. There's no white fragility because it goes over his head.
Yeah. There's a lot going on in this episode that I just, again, as a very white, like West Coast Canadian, I'm not really qualified to unpack. And I fully admit that, but I did find it very interesting.
Very interesting. Got to see the rooftop Koreans and some old footage of the LA riots. You know about that?
No.
Oh, it's a lot of Korean-owned convenience stores, corner shops and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And during all of that, a lot of
that was even common here.
Yeah,
not so much nowadays,
not
but
so
back
much
then.
now. But yeah. And they'd be on rooftops with like guns, making sure that their stores weren't looted, lit on fire, shot up, that kind of thing. So like the roof Koreans was like a thing, and it showed a few clips of.
Fun fact, well, not a fun fact, but an interesting fact. I think I may have mentioned this before, but when I was a kid, I've always been a person who's like really into the news, like really like what's going on in the world, even as a kid. The whole Rodney King / LA riots thing was probably, I think, the first like big like news event that I remember because I was about 7 years old at the time.
I don't know if I was old enough to even be told the cultural impacts because I had not experienced any and did not understand. I think not just racism, but like racial tension and
Oh,
racial differences aren't understood by children. I think it's learned.
it absolutely is. Like, I remember at the time, like when I first heard, when I was like 6, 7 years old, first like heard about the Rodney King thing, seeing it on the news. I didn't like all. I obviously I didn't understand the nuance. I didn't understand like I didn't understand what was going on. All I knew was
In which all the police were acquitted, by the way, of any
which is
charges.
which is what caused the LA riot. All I understood it was at the time was cops beat up an innocent guy for no reason.
Which is still a pretty good fucking reason to get out there and riot. But then as we get older and like realize that there's institutional like generational misuse of, this is like the nicest way to say it, misuse of power
Yeah.
by certain races, certain people of certain skin colors against people of darker skin colors, then
Particularly
things unravel.
particularly in LA by the LAPD. This was like decades of like just pent up rage over rampant mistreatment. And then when all of the cops were acquitted of the whole Rodney King beating, people, all of these tensions just boiled over.
Yeah, very different. The heck. Speaking of another Glover, a Glover from another mother. If weren't the in Predator 2, wasn't that during the LA riots? Like, isn't that movie set in LA during the LA riots?
No, it is set in LA, but it's set during a heat wave.
Oh, okay.
Predator 2 came out in 1990, so it predates all of that.
Well, interesting. Okay. LA in the 70s and 80s was a dangerous time, I'm told.
And in the 90s.
And in the 90s. And for some reason, I thought that was, I know that there's, it's probably just because there's like gang stuff going on in Predator 2. Yeah. I should rewatch that.
Yeah, if it might even be on Disney Plus. That's
my worst joke. A Glover from another. For some reason, Danny Glover pops up in our conversations and our video games from time to time.
He's officially too old for this shit.
He's officially too old for this shit.
You know what? I went and rewatched Lethal Weapon a little while ago. I hadn't seen it. I hadn't seen it in probably like 15, 20 years. But I went and rewatched it. A lot of it hasn't aged very well. But Danny Glover in his character Murtaugh in that film is supposed to be, it's his 50th birthday. But I looked up Danny Glover and he was only like 38.
He was in his 30s. He's just looked 50.
Yeah. And I'm like, holy fuck. Like, he's playing, like, it's supposed to be the character's 50th birthday, but shit, the dude's younger than I am now.
What was it in Indiana Jones, like The Last Crusade? Sean Connery is playing, come on, brain, go. Indiana Jones actor. Harrison Ford's he's playing Harrison Ford's dad, but they're like, what is it, 6 years apart? Like he's like 6 years older or 5 years older than. Is that made up? Is that an urban myth?
No, I think he was only like 10 years older than him or something,
or 10 or something. Yeah,
let's find out.
We're finding out, folks.
Con Shonery.
The man, the myth, the legend.
Con Shonery. Let's see, how old? He was 90 when he died. He died in 2020. He was born in 1930, and Last Crusade came out in 1989. So he would have been 59.
Okay, so he was 59.
He was 59.
Some people hit a certain age and they stay that age. But they get to that age very quickly.
89 minus 42. Okay, yeah, Harrison Ford was 47 in that movie. So Sean Connery was 12 years older.
Okay. But still, that you wouldn't guess that.
No.
And I don't even remember why I mentioned that. But yeah, Danny Glover was 38.
Yeah.
Have you seen that? It's like the Cheers cast, and it shows their age, like when it was like being like filmed, and they're all like shockingly like younger than
you would think. Yeah.
One would think. Yeah.
Well, and I started watching Frasier a while back, and what's his name? Kelsey Grammer. In that first season of Frasier, you see him. He's like balding. He's like got a big gut. He's like wearing a suit.
Yeah.
Dude looks like he's like like pushing 50. He was like 37.
And I would have bet money otherwise.
And
My age.
yeah, and I rewatched Beverly Hills Cop, the first one, a little while ago. And like Eddie Murphy was only like 22 in that movie. I'm like, holy shit. But the chubby, like middle-aged, like bald, like detective that he teams up with along with Judge Reinhold, he was only like 35.
Really?
Yeah. That actor actually only just passed away this year. Like within the past few months.
Huh.
Yeah, he was only like
it was
35.
a different time. Asbestos wasn't everything. Smoking wasn't even dangerous.
And I know I mentioned this before, but in like that first Terminator movie, the when Arnie is like going to all the other Sarah Connors, just killing them all by process of elimination, by finding their names in the phone book and just taking them out through process of elimination. The one that we see him kill is like this woman with like wearing bad makeup, like looks like an old lady, has like a big like perm, is wearing this big like frumpy dress. Like the actress was only like 34.
Like I said, different time.
Anyway.
Smoking in, homosexuality out, asbestos everywhere, lead in all the paint.
And the gas.
And that's what gives it that sweet, sweet aroma. One for you, one for me.
Breathe it in, man. Anyway, we're
just know I'm gonna take. We're going off the rails here.
We're kind of lost in the weeds here. I don't know. I don't really have much more to say, other than I enjoyed it.
It was an insight. It was suspicious. Oh, at the end, Thomas Washington cracks, kind of goes insane.
Yeah.
And thinks that he is Goofy.
Oh yeah, I started laughing when that happened.
And when they don't find his body, but they did find his big shoes and like gloves at the crime scene, and I'm like, okay, now this has become.
At this point, the joke has overstayed its welcome.
I am become Goofy. It gets goofy at the very end.
I am become Goofy.
Yuck of worlds.
I am become Goofy, betrayer of Pluto.
Betrayer of Pluto. That's right. Gosh, Max, I am become Goofy, betrayer of Pluto. Gosh.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Let's go fishing, Max. Well, Max, have you tapped that yet? Come on, tell your old man.
You know who I used to like in Goof Troop was his neighbor Pete, voiced by Jim Cummings.
Isn't Pete a huge fucking asshole? They're more chummy in the TV show.
They are.
They're the other guy's still insecure. Pete's still like insecure, and he has to have the biggest barbecue, and he's got to have like more vehicles or like whatever. I feel like Pete's in massive debt.
Probably.
You know what I mean? Like paying off the house for extended mortgage, probably paying off 2 cars, has a line of credit that he's maxed out. Like,
I think he literally was a used car salesman in the show. I'm pretty sure he was.
I thought that meant that you were rich. Yeah, I think you're right, actually. Like,
yeah. All right. Well, yeah, I don't think
was Pete the dad neighbor or the kid neighbor?
He was the dad.
The kid was. I remember
PJ.
The kid was cool. He was fucking cool.
The kid
PJ was cool.
PJ, yeah, Pete Jr.
Or PJ, right, yeah. He was cool, and him and Max were friends. Yeah. Guess I have to pretend to be friends with DJ's dad.
Well, you just watched a random episode of Hotlanta, even. Would you tune in again?
Oh man, I don't even know what I watched. So much to unpack. So what you're saying is this is not the show? Each episode is not a different mockumentary?
No.
I don't believe you. I would, because this was interesting, and I'm wondering why. So what you're saying is there's a plot and like a normal show?
Yes.
But then there's just this?
Yes, none of the main characters on the show appear in this episode.
Okay, so this doesn't feel like a good representation of the show as a whole, but I feel like Jared wanted us to watch this episode.
Yes.
So I can't really answer that because I feel like we watched a separate. I would say yes, just because I'm looking and it's rated incredibly high. So.
Yeah, based on this, I don't think I would. Just because, like, I kind of felt like I was just watching a Vice documentary.
Except not real. I like Vice documentaries.
I felt like I was watching a Vice documentary, but it about people who don't actually exist.
Right? But what if?
What if?
Gosh.
It was interesting, but yeah, but also, like, this isn't indicative of what the rest of the show is. So yeah.
So it's kind of yeah.
It's
if
almost...
I randomly caught this and then you told me the show is about something else, I'd be like, no, that's not what I saw.
Yeah. This is kind of interesting.
Because... I would, though, because of this. I think it's hilarious that I missed the disclaimer at the beginning and thought this was real for like the first half or first third.
Right. Well,
then I felt betrayed.
That was episode 101 of the Lazor Comb podcast. If you want to support the show, go to patreon.com/lazorcomb, LAZORCOMB. Where starting at the $5 tier, you get access to our bonus weekly Patreon exclusive podcast, the Super Lazor Comb Patreon Super Show. At the $10 tier, you get to pick a episode of a show, or you get to pick a show for us to review a random episode of on this very podcast. You also get commentary tracks and some other goodies. At the $20 tier, you get to pick not only the show, but the episode, much like Jared did here today. It was an interesting choice, so I can't wait to see what some of your next picks are, Jared.
Yeah.
Anyway, if you want to get in on that, go to patreon.com/lazorcomb. To interact with us, join the Discord. There's a link in the episode description, as always. Buy a t-shirt. There's a link to the TeePublic store in the episode description, as always. We'll be back next week with another pick from Jared. Do
we have any IDGAF trains shirts? Or what's the other?
I should make one.
Or like magician.
We do have a
shirts.
magician shirt. Yeah.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, I should make a shirt that just says I don't give a fuck about trains.
And then just have like a cartoon train or something.
Have
would wear
like a
that. I would wear
cartoon
a-
train with like the Ghostbusters like red like circle with a line over it.
I like that. Like coming out, kind of like how the ghost is coming
Yeah.
coming out.
Just like a line over it.
The red, like no
Yeah.
there we go. That's our new shirt.
I might actually make that. That sounds pretty sick. Yeah. So anyway, we're gonna be back next week with a another pick from Jared, which is a show that I've never heard of called Fillmore. And to figure out which episode of Fillmore we're going to be watching, I'm going to hit screen share. Screen share. Share the screen.
Jared, as I know he's listening, when I Googled this, immediately looked familiar, but I was like, is this about Morpheus and Trinity when they were young and going to school?
Yeah, I've never heard
Because
of
it shows like, you know, small circular like glasses like black dude, bald, and then it shows like a goth white chick. And I'm like, Trinity? Morpheus? Are they trying to save Neo from the Matrix while navigating high school?
He's beginning
I'm
to
in.
believe.
He's beginning to believe in arithmetic.
The number generator is rolling and we hit stop.
Ooh, solid.
Episode 5. Red Robins Don't Fly. During an undercover sting operation, boxes of band candy were accidentally discovered in the lake. The candy is traced back to the Red Robins, a seemingly a school club in the same manner as Girl Scouts, who make record sales of their award-winning taffy.
Sussy.
In reality, the Robins strong-arm their competition, stealing candy and cookie dough, cheating and selling taffy, messing up signs of competitors, and the safety patrol have been trying to catch them in the act for a long time.
Safety patrol. Right. They're like teenage cops.
You know what I don't like? Taffy.
Narcs. Oh.
You know what I do like? Burgers
Taffy.
from Red Robin.
Endless, bottomless fries, perhaps.
Bottomless fries, yep. I love that, getting that delicious free birthday burger during the month of your
I always
birth.
forget about that. Don't forget, folks.
Don't forget. If
Abuse all the free shit that you can in this day and age.
If you've got a Red Robin royalty membership, which I have had one since probably like 2015, get a free burger during the month of your birth.
Red Robin royalty?
Yeah, that's what it's called.
Okay.
And my birthday is January 3rd, so usually but you can use the burger at any time during the month of your birth. You can get that free burger. So I would usually go on New Year's Day.
That's a good time.
Yeah.
Do you find there's more people or less people on New Year's Day?
Less, definitely.
Yeah. See that I could see that being great. That's a great use.
Yeah. I love going to like either like Red Robin or going to like a pub on New Year's Day. Because even the people that are there, everyone's usually like so hungover from the night before that the atmosphere is just really chill. Even if there's a fair amount of people in there, everyone's really laid back.
They're calm the fuck down.
Yeah.
Right? I like that.
All right, we'll be back next week with that. And until then, I have been, and by that I mean Fillmore and not free burgers from Red Robin.
And we'll be back with free burgers from Red Robin next
we'll be back with Fillmore next week. And until then, I've been Christopher Siege, one of your hosts.
And I'm NeoCal, your other host.
Thanks for listening. We will goof troop you next time.
Will Gorsh and Hyuk and Max, I just want to go fishing, Max.
And I do declare. Bye-bye.